Apa khabar? Assalamualaikum. I am here to address the issue of the test drive. Saya tahu ramai nak tanya pasal tu. Okey, macam ni. As was explained by my political secretary, we were on our way to Kuala Lumpur. On the way kita lapar, hungry. So we stopped at the food shop. And then betul-betul sebelah the food shop ada kedai kereta showroom. Itu je. As my political secretary said, that's all that happened. Apa dah? Ada video dan gambar yang tunjuk saya masuk the showroom kapak ke? Okay. Ladies. Okay. Yeah. Let's say I masuk the car showroom. It's only because tengah makan, I look across the road, I saw benda yang cantik. Kereta yang cantik, kereta tu. So, you know lah, kita nampak benda cantik, kita tertarik. Kita tertarik sana. Bukanlah macam saya tertarik dengan janda ke, dengan Minah Rewang ke, Belen ke. Tapi kalau ada janda dalam kereta yang cantik tu, lagi bagus kan. Joke, it's a joke. So, saya pergi sebelah nak tengok aja yang kereta yang cantik tu. Tiba-tiba ada salesman datang. He greet me. Apa dia? What is the salesman doing in the shop during MCO, padahal car salesman is not essential? Han tanya lah dia, dan tanya saya pula. Kerja saya hanya to greet him. Apa salah kita greet people? During MCO tak boleh greet people ke? SOP kata tak boleh greet people ke? Ada ke? Ada. Tak ada. So that is all that happened. I just crossed the road to greet him. That is all that happened. Nothing happened. Apa dia? Ada gambar dan video yang nampak saya masuk dalam kereta tu ke? Okay. Ladies. Let's say I masuk the kereta. I duduk dalam the passenger seat. The salesman duduk in the driver seat. Dia yang driver. My bodyguard duduk kat belakang. So I was not test driving the car. I was test passenger the car. Ada tak SOP mengenai test passenger? Tak ada kan? Tak ada. Don't have. Itulah dia. So, apa dia? What about the SOP that says you cannot have more than 2 people in a car? Han siapa? Where you from? Nilai? No wonder lah. I will not be judged by you. I will not be. Assalamualaikum. Thank you all for come here. I will answer all your question. Apa dia? Kat depan tu, my comment when it was reported in the morning that Timbalan Menteri Ahmad Amzad said kerajaan tak dapat memenuhi permintaan orang ramai merakam gambar atau video ketika disuntik. Cannot. You cannot take the video because this will mengganggu the kelancaran of the vaccination process. You tengah dapat the vaccine, you take out your camera and then the nurse or the doctor see the camera want to answer saya. Cannot, you will mengganggu. Cannot, tak boleh, cannot. Bagaimana in the afternoon pula, petang, YB Khairi Jamaluddin said you can take the video in the vaccination process? Can. Apa salahnya? Boleh. Bagus. Memang bagus. Boleh. Because you nak ingatkan. You want to remember. You want to posting IG story. This one is my posterity. I remember. Boleh. Apa salahnya? Kenapa confused? Apa yang confused? Kenapa timbalan menteri pagi cakap sesuatu, menteri petang cakap lain? This is not confusing. The reason the timbalan menteri said one thing in the morning and the menteri said another thing in the afternoon, if you don't want to take a video selfie, you go vaccine in the morning. If you want to take the video selfie, you vaccine in the afternoon. Apa yang confused? Tak boleh. Senang. Hi, Harith Iskander with a 60-second response. Hamelin TV from IG asked, Mr. Harith Iskander, why you can't run for Prime Minister? First of all, thank you for the kind message. And secondly, to become Prime Minister in Malaysia, you need to first be the leader of a political party or a coalition. And then your party or coalition needs to win the actual election, at which point the PM is chosen by the members of the parliament, usually made up of members of the winning party. Which begs the question, what if we, the Rakyat, could actually choose the Prime Minister or any other minister for that matter? So for example, what if we, the Rakyat, could vote for person A to be the Prime Minister, and he's from this party, but we like person B to be the Minister of Education and he's from a different party, and then we like person C to be the Home Minister and he's a complete independent, which means instead of ministers being chosen from the pool of people who are members of the one winning party, we get to elect the person that we think could actually be best for the job. So what about that? Harith Iskander, 60-second response. Assalamualaikum. Welcome. Thank you all for come here. Saya akan jawab soalan anda. I will answer your question. Apa dia? Komen mengenai timbalan menteri yang nikah online with the imam in a masjid kedai baru di Golok. First of all, fitnah, fake news. Mana ada masjid yang call itself Masjid Kedai Baru? Is it a kedai or a masjid? How would you feel if I buka a kedai and call it Masjid Baru? Confused tak you all? You nak datang sembahyang ke nak beli buku? Confused. Tapi seperti yang dijelaskan oleh the timbalan menteri, ini perkara peribadi. This is a private matter. Why you all sibuk-sibuk probok ni? The timbalan menteri told Sinar Harian, and I quote, isu seperti ini sepatutnya tidak berlaku. What does he mean that the nikah patutnya tidak berlaku? No. The video patutnya tidak berlaku. Who would be so stupid to break the law and then video and then upload the video online? It shouldn't have happened. Takkan you nak makan durian PKPP ataupun you nak visit your friend for lunch and then upload the video online. It shouldn't have happened. You will not do it. What's that? The timbalan yang di-Petua Majlis Agama Islam Wilayah Naratiwat Abdul Aziz Cik Mat menjelaskan pihaknya tidak pernah mengiktiraf pernikahan secara dalam talian. This is where he is wrong. Ini bukan secara talian. Nobody is calling, halo, tak ada. This was online. Atas talian, on the line. Macam Tinder, macam Grindr. What is Grindr? I don't know. Anyway, they didn't calling. This one is video calling. Ini norma baru. But once again, I repeat, it shouldn't have happened. But why nikah right now during this time when the entire country is struggling, orang yang tak ada makan, tak ada nasi, and why nikah in the first place? Ini you kena salahkan Spanish fly. Hey, it's Harith Iskander, 60-second response. I got a direct message on Facebook from a Joe Harith who asked, Harith, you anti-Melayu ke? Nak dapat sokong non-bumi sebab family you semua tak ada Malays. Lucky your late father Melayu bracket soldier. Kalau dia ada, sedih tengok you sekarang. Okay, I tried to reply to Joe Harith directly on Facebook, but I think he blocked me. I could not do that, so I'm putting it out there. My late father, Colonel Musa bin Muhammad, waktu dia di hutan during the communist insurgency in the 60s and 70s, alongside all the other soldiers daripada berbagai bangsa of the 6th Regiment Rangers, tak pernah fikir kita sedang bertugas untuk mempertahankan bumi ataupun non-bumi. Diorang semua fikir kita bertugas untuk mempertahankan rakyat Malaysia. So I don't think my late father would be sedih to see what I'm doing now. Tapi mungkin dia sedih kalau dia tahu ada juga orang Malaysia zaman ini yang ada mentality yang kata kita hanya boleh sokong bumi atau hanya boleh sokong non-bumi. I'm Harith Iskander, 60-second response. Saya sokong Malaysia. Hi, Harith Iskander, 60-second response. You've heard about the Bendera Putih movement, a wonderful initiative encouraging people who are desperate kepada mana-mana rumah yang terputus bekalan makanan and they need immediate help to reach out by waving a white flag. Tak perlu malu, tak perlu merayu. Now, in the wake of this fantastic initiative, the Ahli Parlimen of Bachok, Nik Ado, responded by saying, angkat tangan berdoa, bukan angkat bendera putih, suggesting that the power lies in prayer and not in a white flag. I have a suggestion. Combine the two. If you're hungry and you have no money and you haven't eaten for 3 days because the ongoing pandemic has destroyed your livelihood, how about you angkat bendera putih and then angkat tangan berdoa and hope that someone sees your bendera putih and brings you and your kids some rice and some vegetables and maybe a little milk because you have been feeding your 6-month-old baby syrup because you couldn't afford milk That is a true story, by the way. Saya angkat tangan berdoa that you've enjoyed my 60-second response. Hi, Harith Iskandar with a 60-second response to this news item.
Kementerian Kesihatan menjelaskan mana-mana individu yang terbukti diberikan suntikan vaksin picagari kosong akan menerima suntikan dos baru.
Menterinya Datuk Seri Dr. Adham Baba berkata pihaknya akan memanggil individu berkenaan untuk menerima suntikan semula.
Prove that you were given an empty syringe and the ministry will contact you to give you a proper dose? I have two questions. One, how do I prove I received an empty syringe? And two, how do I prove I received an empty syringe? There's a sign outside the door that clearly says no video camera allowed, or you can take an antibody test to find out. Oh, so now the onus is on me to prove that you didn't give me the vaccination that you said you would. But here is what really concerns me. The reaction of, oh, you had an empty syringe, tak apa, prove it, we'll give you another jab. This isn't like going to the mechanic. Oh, we didn't change your engine oil, tak apa, prove it, we'll change your engine oil. It should be, we didn't actually give you the vaccine which we promised we were going to give you to potentially save your life. And if you hadn't videotaped it, we would never have known. I am so sorry. Why didn't they react that way? You know what's worse? Amongst the millions, and I mean millions of vaccinations already given out, these few incidents have spoiled it for the thousands of good, honest Malaysians who've been working so hard to make this vaccination program a success. This is Harith Iskandar with a slightly longer response than 60 seconds. Get vaccinated. Assalamualaikum. Thank you all for come here. Seperti mana yang anda semua tahu, today the PM and the Cabinet resigned. Letak jawatan. Apa Cabinet? Orang Melayu kata Cabinet. Jadi mulai sekarang kita semua tak ada kerja. Apa dia? Oh, ya. Kecuali the PM. Dia dapat kerja baru. Kalau dulu dia PM, sekarang dia Caretaker PM. Tapi for me, menteri yang biasa, no job, tak ada kerja. Jadi, if anything happen, don't ask me. I wasn't there. It wasn't me. Apa dia? What am I going to do now that I resign? Oh, you don't know. I am going to terus berkhidmat untuk Malaysia. I want to make sure that Malaysia is number one. That is why I download the Pop Check Click. Dengan Pop Check Click, we must make sure Malaysia is number one. We must beat Thailand and Taiwan. Okay, don't disturb me. I got very many things to do. Okay, Pop Check, Pop Check. Buka mulut tu. Anda semua boleh balik. Jangan kacau, saya tengah sibuk. Come on, Malaysia! Wah! Still there? Okay. Assalamualaikum. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, everybody out there in the land of social media. My name is Harith Iskandar. Dan sekali lagi, welcome to What's Going On Malaysia. Oh my God, this is my third show in a row, day by day, or rather night by night, because frankly speaking, negara kita, Malaysia, we move so fast. We just got things happening left, right and center. Bam. Today is Monday, 16 hari bulan Ogos, and we lost a prime minister. Our prime minister resigned. And who did we get? a caretaker prime minister. And who was it? The same guy. Oh my God. Okay. Tuan-tuan dan puan-puan, mula-mula I just want to say welcome to the show. Terima kasih to everybody who's watching. I know that we have got viewers from all over the place, all over the country, first of all over the world. First of all, let me know, say hello and let me know where you're watching from and I will acknowledge you. Maureen and Murray, good evening. Also, let me know if you can hear me. Am I clear? Boleh dengar? Everything is clear. And then we're going to jump straight into the show because we got so much to talk about. Teresa Ng says, hi, Sir Harith, please help Malaysia. I'm trying. I'm trying. That was my wife coming through the door. You could see her. Tak apa. Ju Khoman Smilan says, good evening, Malaysia. Adrian says watching from Subang Jaya. Good day, boss. Kelvin, you let me know where you're watching from, guys. Let me know what country. Let me know what district. Let me know what daerah. Let me know what adun. Let me know what kawasan. Let me know what kampung. Ahmad Solin from Pilar Pinang. David Pock, greetings from New Zealand. Welcome to the show. Latara Soon, good evening, Harith. Zara Abdullah, good evening, Harith. Guys, this is going to be an interactive show. Everybody, I have not had time to send out a call to ask for video questions. So I want you to ask your questions right here. I will get my producer at the side there. Just to let you know, I do not do the show alone. I've got assistance from the side there. My wife, Dr. Jessamine Lim, and my able brother-in-law, Anthony Lim. Say hello, guys. Hello there. What's up? What's up, Batu Pahat, Andy TH there. What's up, Borneo, Sarawak, Morvello, Shiny Tan. You have a most awesome name, Shiny Tan. England, Bath, Pat Lim KH is watching from England. What's going on? Selva Wilson from Ipoh. I miss going to Ipoh. Gina Kwa from Bangsa. Hell, I miss going to Bangsa. Butterworth, we've got everybody from all over the world. Guys, you know what? I'm not going to hold it back anymore. Okay, here's what happened. Today, what happened on Saturday was we heard the rumblings. Kita dengar berita-berita galapan from Ipoh, what's going on. We heard the rumblings that the Prime Minister was going to resign, tapi that was Saturday. He couldn't resign because apparently Yang di-Pertuan Agong was in Cameron Highlands. So the news started spreading that Tan Sri Muhyiddin would present his letter of resignation to the Yang di-Pertuan Agong on Monday. So, of course, Malaysia went into overdrive. Walaupun kita tak bekerja on Sunday officially in most states, we know that there was all type of meeting. Kita saw visual, kereta-kereta Velfire masuk ke Publica with all kind of ministers coming in out of the cars. And we know that, there was all kind of thing happening. Kita orang biasa. We don't know exactly what's happening, but there was something happening. And then today, as you all know, if you don't know, let me tell you what happened. Kampung Banting, what's happening? Felkras, Seberang Perak, what's happening? Today, it was official. Our Prime Minister resigned, meletak jawatan. All right. So I think he met with the Agong at 12:30. Now, please don't quote me on these facts. I'm just going by what I know, and I may get certain facts wrong, certain details wrong. So I will prequel this by saying I don't know exactly what was happening because saya pun bekerja hari ini. I had a lot of things to do. I was not following it minute by minute. So rupa-rupanya he met the Agong. And then I got busy in a meeting and some jobs. And then when I came out of the meeting, I discovered that we had a caretaker prime minister. Woo! Caretaker prime minister. And who was the caretaker prime minister? Tan Sri Muhyiddin. Tapi sebelum tu, we know that the cabinet, all the ministers had resigned, had letak jawatan. So as far as I know, ini orang layman, and I know that most of you, what's up, Chicago? K-Mo, KYG from Chicago. I love the Chicago Blues. We got B.B. Johnson. We got B.B. King. B.B. King's not from Chicago. Maybe I love the Blues. All right, from Hong Kong, George Thomas from Hong Kong. Let me complete my story. So right now, as it stands at 10 p.m. on a Monday night, we have a caretaker prime minister without a cabinet. That's as much as I know, and I'm sure that's as much as you know. Vietnam, Casey Tay, watching from Vietnam, welcome. Now, of course, immediately I got on my phone. I was like, what does that mean? Apa maksud caretaker prime minister? And who is in charge? Because the cabinet, iaitu the ministers, have all stepped down and resigned. Jadi, who's running the country? Who's handling the issues? Who's making decision? Basically, I have a question. What's going on, Malaysia? Fear not, fair weather friends out there, and everybody else also who may not be fair weather and does not like what we have to say on the show. Immediately, I got on the line and I called up someone I would like to call a friend. He's been a guest on my show before. He has the credentials. He speaks from a very knowledgeable position. And I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to get in touch with this guy and I'm going to ask him to explain to me personally what's going on. But then I thought to myself, hell, why explain to me personally? Why not explain to all of you out there from New Zealand, from Perak, from Kuala Lumpur, from Subang, from Chicago, from Jerusalem? Are you sure? Baki Ibrahim, watching from Jerusalem? Let me introduce the guest who will explain to me and all of you and explain the last 24 hours, because I'll be honest with you, I have no idea what went on. Tuan-tuan dan puan-puan, please join me in welcoming into the studio on this very live streaming Saudara GK Ganesan. Apa khabar, Mr. Ganesan? How are you, Sir GK?
Selamat petang dan khabar baik tuan-tuan dan puan-puan.
Okay. You've heard my very frantic introduction. You've heard my very frantic, and I'm frantic only because Malaysia moves so fast. I am so blessed that I contacted you. I contacted you like 8 p.m. and you said, yes, let's talk about it. Let's get on the show tonight. And we are on the show 2 hours later, because who knows, by the end of the show, something else may have happened and we may have another prime minister. I have no idea how it works. Please, Mr. GK Ganesan, for the benefit of the audience out there who may not know what has been going on in the last 48 hours, give us a brief step-by-step factual outline. And I know you always speak in facts. What has been happening and what happened today? And then we'll talk about the future. Take it away.
From the 3rd of August, there have been defections from the Perikatan Nasional, and I believe 8 people left from UMNO on the 3rd of August. Okay. And 3 days later, the president of UMNO said, saya mencabar Perdana Menteri untuk menunjukkan bahawa beliau mempunyai majority. And then some days later, the deputy prime minister came and said, actually, we have a majority, it's more than 110. So I thought of telling him, hello, majority is 112, 222 divided by 2 is not 110, it's 112. He thought, what, 222 minus the 2 MPs who had passed away equal to 220 divided by 2 equal to 110. That doesn't work like that. There is a thing called an absolute majority.
Maths. I think it's called maths.
Yeah, absolute majority means you must have 112. So at any rate, from the 3rd of August, it became very clear that he was losing his majority. And there is a principle which was cited in a case called Edict Benro in 1963, Privy Council. There, I believe it was Lord Ratcliffe who said, the king must be in a position to ensure that this person has lost his majority and that he can find from extraneous evidence. So there was argument from a group of lawyers who said, no, you must do it in Parliament, nowhere else. I disagree. The Privy Council case that says, so long as the king can make up his mind and there is credible evidence that there is loss of majority, then the question is whether he can dismiss. I took the position after some analysis that he could dismiss the prime minister. At any rate, the 2009 Perak case where the then His Majesty the Sultan of Perak, without quite using the words I dismiss Nizar, he said, you are deemed dismissed, I appoint a new chief minister. So those arguments have actually come back into play last year. This year, as you recall, there was a problem in Sabah. The federal court took the same principle. Extraneous evidence is good enough. So then the prime minister makes a fatal error. He comes out and says, excuse me, I think I have lost this majority. Would you chaps come and form a unity government and stuff? I've got 7 points. I'm suddenly thinking about leaping frogs and all the rest of it. That was an open admission that he had lost his majority, and the king at that point didn't require any further evidence. And therefore, the right thing for the prime minister to have done would have been to resign. And he delayed it by a few days. He resigned, I believe it was. This morning he went formally before His Majesty the King, and he menghadap Tuanku and he said, I'm resigning. And the Tuanku said, very good, I'm accepting it. And Tuanku did something really proper. He said, according to Parliamentary Convention, you are the outgoing Prime Minister. We do not have a Prime Minister now. The country cannot be in a situation. Yes, Haris.
Okay, no, so let me because I'm just this layman listening to all this. What I understand is, so the Prime Minister resigned, but I also saw a Facebook and a tweet and a story from Khairi Jamaluddin. So the cabinet is by law required to automatically resign at the same time. Chronologically, is that meant to happen? How does that work?
Article 43, Clause 4 says the moment the Prime Minister has lost confidence in the majority of the MPs of Parliament, he and his cabinet must resign. Actually, it says the cabinet must resign. Cabinet includes the Prime Minister.
Okay, so that's why, from my memory, at about 12:30, officially, I saw an Insta story from Khairi Jamaluddin saying we have resigned, and Hishamuddin, etc., etc. So that's how it's meant to happen. Okay, carry on.
So then the king said, all right, we cannot have a situation where there is no Prime Minister in the country. So you hang on and you stay. So there was a lot of consternation saying, oh, how can he, having resigned, continue to be a Prime Minister? How can the king do it? Why didn't the king call, for example, the Deputy Prime Minister or somebody else?
Yes, exactly my question.
The answer was, when the cabinet resigned, everything became zero. There was no Deputy Prime Minister in play. Gone. Finito.
Correct. Okay, I'm going to deviate for a moment. I heard, it was told to me by someone quite learned as well, that actually the position of Deputy Prime Minister, does it or does it not exist? Because for a long time, Tan Sri Muhyiddin did not have a Deputy Prime Minister. Because I don't know, is this, it's not an automatic, right? We don't need to automatically have.
In England, when Boris Johnson was struck with COVID-19, they had to go and, I think it was the Home Minister, a Secretary for the Home Affairs, who was then nominated as Deputy Prime Minister. And usually the custom is the Home Minister steps in. That's Westminster Parliament. But in reality, there was no Deputy Prime Minister for a very long time. And I remember writing a video on it. We published a video and we said, oh, there is no Deputy Prime Minister. And within 12 hours, there was one.
In Malaysia.
Yeah, within 12 hours, there was one. And it was quite gratifying. Next question.
Back to the story. So, Tan Sri Muhyiddin resigns, the cabinet resigns, and in your words, the Yang di-Pertuan Agong made a valid and correct decision saying, okay, we need to put someone in the position. And so what, he decrees or he bertitah and he automatically assigns a caretaker prime minister, which is our resigned prime minister. Yes?
Yes.
Is this, I don't know, is this normal? Is this, I don't know. In your words, you were expecting this?
The question you should ask me is it written down anywhere?
Okay. Yeah, because you were a lawyer and you need it written down somewhere. Okay. Yes. Is it written down anywhere?
Answer no. Answer no. If the answer is no, then what happens? Where do we deal with it? What do we, why? You know, you remember, have you seen people playing rugby? They will throw the ball from the outside and guys will jump and do this or that. I often used to ask myself, where is that written down? And then I asked, there was a game between Pakistan and India and the ball went across 3/4 of the line and then bounced back. And the question was, it was not a goal. And I was very upset. Why didn't Pakistan win? And somebody said, the whole ball must cross the entire line. And so, I see. So then I went looking for some authorities. I found an article written on the 8th of June in 2013 by someone called Anne Tormey, who's a professor of constitutional law in University of Sydney. And then afterwards, Mr. Cyrus Das, on the 28th of March 2013, wrote a similar article. And I did my own research and I found that there is nothing written anywhere in the Constitution about either an interim government, an interim prime minister, or a caretaker prime minister. Then I went back to Walpole, who's considered to be the first former prime minister, and I started checking from those days. And then it came to realize it's actually a convention. I remember Karpal Singh, before his passing, once said, conventions are stronger than laws.
Yes,
If you
I know
go to a
exactly
Hindu
what you're
temple,
talking about.
if you go to a Hindu temple, they'll remove their slippers and wash their feet. So I kept asking myself, where is it written down? And my father said, stop being a lawyer. My mother said, stop being a lawyer. You have to come into a holy place. Every temple, every masjid, every place where people pray to God must be a holy place. So people wash their feet as a sign of being cleansed, you see. So I said, okay. So conventions are very, very important. And conventions are the ones that fill in the gaps where the law doesn't penetrate. So where there's no law, conventions fill the space, and conventions tell us, dulu buat, kita buat lah. Dulu tak buat, tak boleh buat lah.
On that note of conventions, guys, I think what I'm going to ask a question now, which my learned guest, GK Ganesan, will answer. It may shock most of you. So what I want you to do right now is I want you to immediately start sharing this Facebook post, start sharing this YouTube link, and subscribe as well to my channel, because I'm going to ask a question about the position of caretaker government, and I need you to share right now, because I want as many people as possible to hear this answer, which is based in fact. And I'm sorry, I'm building this up to a crescendo of drama right now, because I was blown away when GK shared this fact with me prior to the show. So start sharing it right now, because I'm going to ask this question. So yes, it is a convention that we have the caretaker position of the caretaker prime minister, as asked by Judy Lim earlier on, also in the comments. But you have some information that, number one, this is not the first time we're having a caretaker prime minister. And number two, not only has this happened before, but we have had non-Bumiputra caretaker prime ministers. Is this a fact?
It is.
Tuan GK Ganesan.
It is.
Explain, please.
I'll give you a historical example.
Okay.
On the 3rd of August, the Prime Minister Tun Razak had left the country on official business. The Deputy Prime Minister at that time was the gentleman by the
3rd
name
of August, what year was this?
1973.
Okay.
Where some of you may have only been a twinkle in your father's eyes. But anyway, in 1973, the then Prime Minister Tun Razak had left the country on official business. The Deputy Prime Minister was a gentleman by the name of Tun Ismail. And after him, number 3 on the list was Tun Tan Siew Sin. And number 4 on the list was Tun Samandin. So unfortunately, Tun Razak had left the country. Number 2 was still in the country, Deputy Prime Minister. Number 3 had also left the country, and number 4 was in the country. So 1 and 3 had left. Number 2 and number 3 were present. And then number 2, unfortunately, passed away. That was on the 3rd, I believe it was the 2nd of August, 1973. And both senior figures were out of the government, out of the country. And so the question was, who should become the Prime Minister? Tun Samandin was taken to His Majesty the King on the 3rd of August, and move up that picture, that part of the date is just below that. That's right. On the 3rd of August, he became the acting Prime Minister of Malaysia for a single day, and therefore an ethnic Indian gentleman in Malaysia became a Prime Minister in 1973. I became curious. I called his daughter Deva Kunjari, and I asked her, and she recalled, yes, she was informed too. She had come back, that Dad was there, and Dad said, our Deputy Prime Minister has passed away. And then she asked him, who is the Prime Minister now? And he just smiled at her. And then she said, are you the Prime Minister? And he wouldn't answer. And he just smiled, and he went and did stuff as usual. So that is the story of how Tun Samandin became a Prime Minister on the 3rd of August 1973. Now we come to the year 1987. April the 24th was the 38th General Assembly of the UMNO. At that time, the coalition had an understanding by agreement that it should be the leader of UMNO who should become the Prime Minister of Malaysia. And therefore, on, I believe, the 24th of April, election was held and the votes were counted. Mahathir was not expected to win. Tengku Razali was expected to win. However, when the final vote came in, it was 761 for Mahathir, 718 for Tengku Razali. There was a difference of 43 votes. 11 individuals rushed to the court and they complained to Mr. Justice Harun that 78 delegates were from illegal parties. They were from branches which were unregistered, and therefore the election was void. Caught in a very difficult situation, Harun Hashim, being the impartial soul that he was, went through the evidence, and on the 4th of February 1988, he said these words. I am sad to say, very sadly, he said, UMNO was at the material time an unlawful assembly. This was on the 4th of February 1988. By the time they could form a new party, Mahathir, of course, didn't have his party with him. He formed what was called UMNO Baru, and everywhere MPs from UMNO or leaders of UMNO would go to all the kampung-kampung. They would put their UMNO Baru, and then they would take a can of paint and they paint out the word baru. Dulu pun sama, sekarang pun sama, UMNO memang sama, and all the rest of it. And past fellows used to make fun of UMNO by calling UMNO Chak in Kelantan. So that from the 4th of February until the 16th of February, an ethnic Chinese gentleman by the name of Ling Leong Sek telah mengadap tuanku, and he became the Prime Minister of Malaysia. And there you have two non-Malays who became the Prime Ministers. Therefore, this myth that only a Malay gentleman must become the Prime Minister is not quite true. And the Constitution says everyone is equal, Article 8, I believe it is. Yeah.
So are you saying that, okay, before we move on, that the Prime Minister, as far as the Constitution is concerned, does not have to be Bumiputra?
No, the Constitution doesn't say that. It's an understanding that has been brought forward by UMNO and carried forward for 62 years. But even then, in those 62 years, we had two non-Malays taking power. And they faithfully handed it back to the Malays when the time was right. Nobody ran off with money. Yeah.
So, okay, those are facts. Those are facts. But I think, is this the first time in our current history that a Prime Minister who resigned is then handed the role of caretaker Prime Minister? Would that be correct in saying?
No. The convention is every time. There are three ways by which a caretaker Prime Minister can come into power. One, immediately after elections. So, for example, Datuk Sri Najib was the Prime Minister, and then we had the 2018 election in May. On the 9th of May, the results were announced, and Mahathir became the Prime Minister on the 10th of May. So, from the time the elections took place up to the time Mahathir took over, Najib was in fact the Prime Minister. He was a caretaker Prime Minister.
Okay.
So this is a convention that we followed without break, and there are four things that a caretaker Prime Minister cannot do. He is only a security guard. Dia menjaga tempat aja.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. Maybe this may lead into what you're about to say. Apa bezanya kalau dulu Prime Minister dengan caretaker Prime Minister? Apa bezanya sebenarnya?
If he is not a caretaker Prime Minister, he has certain powers, quite vast powers. In fact, in Mahathir's time, what Mahathir did was he centralized executive power in the hands of the Prime Minister so much. The Malaysian Prime Minister in his hands has got more powers than the Prime Minister of Great Britain, of United Kingdom. A great many things reside within the Prime Minister's hands. The cabinet is appointed at the advice of the Prime Minister. People are fired from the cabinet at the request of the Prime Minister. People are appointed into the cabinet at the suggestion of the Prime Minister. Judges are appointed on the recommendation of the Prime Minister. People in the Speaker of Parliament, his appointment has a large role that behind the scenes that played by the Prime Minister. Prime Minister is the leader of the Dewan Rakyat because he represents the people. The Prime Minister has great power, but none of those powers can be exercised during the time you're caretaker Prime Minister. For example, you cannot make new policy. You cannot say, tutup semua kedai, tutup semua factory. The caretaker Prime Minister cannot make those rules.
Oh, okay.
Number one.
Hold on a second. On that note, I just want to very quickly ask. So does that mean whatever rules that came until today, pukul 12.30, whatever time that was, Monday, 16th of August, cannot be changed? For example,
Yeah.
if I don't know, a stand-up comedy club having live shows in the public car called the Joke Factory was not allowed to do live shows before the 16th of August 2021. That
Yeah.
rule cannot be changed because we do not have a standing prime minister.
Come on to change it. Yeah. So if the caretaker prime minister turns up at this joke factory and says, guys, let's allow everybody to carry on, crack your jokes and stand up and do comedy, that would be an illegal order.
So are you saying, I have no idea what comedy club you're talking about. I did not know you're referring to the Joke Factory in Publica, which we are not talking about. So restaurants, let's say, sorry, I'm just deviating from the point of view of the Rakyat right now. So right now, as it stands, restaurants are not allowed to open or have people sitting in restaurants. Does that mean that rule cannot be changed regardless of the numbers of whatever happens?
Yes, because the law that opens or closes restaurants is the law under an act called the Prevention it's called the PCIDA, Prevention and Control of Infectious Diseases Act. Certain orders can only be given by the Minister of Health or the Director General acting under him, under his
which
power.
we don't have at the moment.
Now, and therefore you can't change any of the rules until the new Prime Minister comes into place. So it's going to take 3 months. The new Prime Minister, for 3 months we can't do a thing, but of course it won't take 3 months. It probably take 3 days, 4 days. Yeah.
Okay, hold on. Guys, I think everyone who's watching, you need to start sharing this right now if you have not done this, because what we're going to talk about affects all of us. Are you saying that if, let's just say, if COVID miraculously disappeared, and it won't, but if it did in the next month, we still could not open up businesses as per usual pre-COVID because we do not have the cabinet in place to make these announcements, to make these rulings.
You're asking this question to a lawyer, and my answer is very clear to you. You cannot change the rules. They stay in place because a valid government, we assume the government was valid, a government made those rules and regulations, and laws must be complied with. We can't break it as and when we feel like it. Oh, the Prime Minister has resigned. All right, let me go and kill somebody. You can't do that. The law is the law. It must be obeyed without any change.
Okay, I'm sorry if I'm going to deviate right now. So I understand the cabinet is right. So I was actually a little bit concerned about that. Okay, so who is going to give us our daily reports? Who is going to start talking about the SOPs and whether we can start opening up borders? Who is going to take all the decisions? People were saying, the KSU will take over, or the civil service will take over. But according to you, by law, they may take over operations, but they can't change rules.
Yeah. So let me try and explain this.
Please do.
The definition of a government in practical terms comprises of two arms: the cabinet and the civil service, which is a servant of the cabinet. So the civil servant will help. They are permanent employees in the house, and they will obey the orders of the cabinet. And the cabinet and the civil service are accountable to Parliament, and Parliament is the boss in the house. So when the cabinet is not around, the servants will actually run it. So the civil service is now running it. Just because the Home Minister resigned his post today at 12 midday, we didn't have policemen downing their tools and going back home and sleeping. They're still manning roadblocks. They're looking after the order in the country. They're making sure that, if there is an accident, there are protocols that they're following. Doctors are treating patients in the way that medical protocol and the Medical Act tells them. So the law permeates the whole society and the law proceeds. Only that the government is always the same. It's the government of Malaysia. It's only the guys at the top who change all the time. So we must understand, just because the cabinet has resigned doesn't mean that we can change the law as and when we like. Which brings us to the next point. The government cannot, the caretaker prime minister cannot issue new policy. He cannot spend any money. He can't involve Malaysian government with new contracts with, for example, Pfizer company or AstraZeneca company or Sinovac company, or he cannot make new commitments. Say, oh, I will give you 10 million ringgit here. Oh, I'll give 10 million ringgit there. And he cannot say, oh, by the way, could I please appoint Harith Iskandar as the Minister of Defense as of today until further notice? He can't do any of those things, which is unfortunate for you, Harith Iskandar. You could have been the defense minister. But these are things
I would be an amazing Minister of Defense.
I'm sure you would. Next question, Haris.
Okay, I've got a million permutations of what can and will happen. Okay, let's put that aside. We now have a caretaker prime minister. What is everybody else doing, i.e. the members of Pakatan Harapan, the members of Berjuang, the members of UMNO? What options do they have to twist this around? Because I'm sure they all haven't stopped and go, okay, let's wait till next year or whatever, whenever the election. What options do they have to press a change within the next week, 2 weeks, 1 month, whatever? Do they have any options? Or legally, is it all tutup kedai?
No, they do. And I would like to answer as a lawyer and as a commoner. I will answer as a commoner first.
Please do.
All these fellows who are MPs are our servants. They must not forget that. And I'm not going to let them forget that, number one. Number two, they have to do what is good for the country. They can't say, cabinet has resigned, let's go back home and sleep. Why? You're not getting salary, is it? You have to work for the betterment of the nation. You have the duty to act. And I tell you, I remember one gentleman, I can't remember who he was, during the 27th of July argument, he rose and he said, why are we arguing about sections? Why are we arguing about whether these laws were, revoked or not? Why can't we all sit down and work together? Some guy from DAP, I think it was. Why can't we sit down and work together and find out how we can help the people, how we can make life easy? And basically they ignored him. So that I speak as a commoner. Now I speak as a lawyer. All that needs to be done is one man who must be a member of the Dewan Raya, not member of the cabinet, not member of the Senate, a member of the Dewan Raya. This guy must go to the king and say, Your Majesty the King, ke bawah duli tuanku, I have 112 people or more who support me. And then he will, of course, give. Today, the word statutory declaration has lost its meaning. But in those days, if you signed a statutory declaration, your word was your bond. And if you lied in that, you can go to prison. But today, everybody signs one statutory declaration. By tomorrow morning, another statutory declaration, it becomes the paper that they used to put kacang putih in. You remember those days? These guys used to sell kacang putih.
I missed that. 20 cent kacang putih at the football games. Kacang putih.
Correct. And I had a guy in Seremban who used to sell karipap. He said, satu karipap, bagus. Satu makan dua mau. And then we used to shout from the back of the bus, dua makan hospital mau. Used to chase us down the alley. But the thing is, these MPs must get together. They must go before the king and say, Your Majesty, I now have the support of 112 or more, and I would like to form the government. Mr. A says that. Then Mr. B comes and says, Your Majesty, I also have 120 people, And His Majesty takes this letter and he looks at it and says, there's Ramasamy Muthusamy Muniandi and Achong. This side also got Ramasamy Muthusamy Muniandi and Achong. And Ali, this side also got Ali. So Tuanku asks, yang mana betul ni? Sini pun sama, sana pun sama. Sini 112, sana 120. Mana satu better nak percaya? She's going to ask this, isn't she? So what the king has to do, he has to go into an investigation mode. And if he is satisfied, and the law says only he has to, in the Majesty's opinion, in his judgment, not in your judgment, not in Parliament's judgment, not in anybody's judgment, in the king's judgment, if this person is likely to command, not in fact commands. And one very clever lawyer, I think he didn't go to med school the other day, he wrote an opinion and he says, it's not a mathematical function, even if it's 84, 85, you can. It's likely only what? Day. Absolute majority means 112 lah, macam. 112 means minimum you must have 112. then you go before His Majesty the King and say, I've got 112 or more. Of course, 112 majority is a wafer thin majority. It won't be stable. So you then form a government. So you then ask me just now, party A, party B, party C, party D. We do not have now a single party with an absolute majority. That's called a majority government. Now we can only form a minority government. And guess what? The more advanced a country is, the more diverse are the opinions of the people, and you will have many clumps of people not coming together but being in disparate groups, and that forces the MPs to come together and work. So it doesn't matter whether you're from Pejuang or this party or that party, you come together, you say to yourself, all right, it doesn't matter who is the Prime Minister, I'm interested in the people who voted me in, I'm going to sacrifice my confidence in this guy. Can you please go forward, see His Majesty, I'll support you, let's help the government, let's help the people, let's help the poor people, let's help the economy. That's what they should be doing now. I've lost you, Haris. I've lost you, Haris. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Very good.
Okay. So we've spent the last 40 minutes talking about constitution, talking about law. Let me just ask you, as a lawyer from a layman's term, because this is what I'm concerned about. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We have been receiving daily reports of deaths and numbers and all. How is this situation, or is this situation going to help or hurt the current efforts, forget the politics, the current efforts of healing the country, healing the Rakyat? And I'll put it a step further. The vaccination program, which in my humble opinion, YB Khairi Jamaluddin was doing a pretty good job of it. Does his job stop as a minister? Will it continue? You see where I'm going here? We're in the pandemic. What's going to happen to that? Will anything change? Is it just going to tumble along on the same tracks? I guess I don't know whether I'm asking the right person. What do you think?
This is the correct question, and let me answer you. The civil service is the body that runs the entire country. The civil service is more powerful than the cabinet. Anybody who tells you otherwise doesn't understand how democracy works. The civil service are a group of unelected people who, by loyalty to the king, have been around for 45 years, meaning the KSU of this particular ministry or the KSU of that particular ministry would have been a man of about 40 years of experience. He would have worked with about 30 different ministers in the course of his job. He knows his job inside out. He doesn't require the minister to get down to the ground and do the vaccination. They have all these procedures in place. They just have to be more efficient.
Well, the KSU doesn't change every time a minister changes.
No. They are permanent. There is a mechanism and a machinery that sit in situ, that's constantly ticking away. How well it's ticking away, whether it's as efficient, is how well we choose our civil servants. Are we having the very best civil servants in the world? Are we getting our civil servants to be first-class honors? You know, in those days when British were in power, only if you got a first-class honors degree, you were available to occupy the highest offices in the land. Today, I have no idea what's happening. And you have to ask yourself whether we have the very best persons in the civil service, and that's a debate for another day. But the answer is the civil service is there. It's a civil service that runs. The IGP doesn't have to hold the hand of the Home Minister to do his job. You know, he's trained. He's a policeman. He's been around for 45 years. You don't have to tell him what to do. He knows the law.
Okay, okay. Here is me, Mr. Orang Rakyat Malaysia, who for the last 18 months has been complaining, ala miti buka ni Ismail Sobri tutup tu, Ismail Sobri buka ni miti tutup tu Azmi pupap. And I'm members of various business alliances and committees and fighting to open this and fighting to open that. Okay, I understand the civil service being on the ground and just buat kerja and running, but so decisions of, you know what, we need to open this because God forbid if we don't open this, more people are going to commit suicide or whatever. Who starts to take care of those shifts in decisions? And bearing in mind, we've never had a pandemic in the history of since the Spanish flew, not fly. But do you know what I mean? Who starts
Yeah.
to tweak
Let me have some
those
warm water.
decisions?
Yeah, go on then.
Who starts tweaking those decisions about what industries can open, what industries can go on, following what SOPs? Forget the law. Who can start tweaking
No,
that
no.
such
We
that?
must always start with the law. We must always
Okay.
start with the law, because if you come away from the law, then it's everyone for himself.
Okay.
Actually, the Prevention and Control of the Infectious Diseases Act says some decisions can be taken by the Director General himself.
Boleh.
Wow. Wow. So the Director General of each ministry actually has powers, certain discretions that he can use in order to smoothen and make more efficient the machinery of government. It's the civil servants who run the entire government. This is one of the things that I always complain the Pakatan Harapan government didn't understand. It is the civil servants who run the government. You cannot run the country without befriending the civil servants. You really got to understand this. The civil service is exceedingly powerful. And
Okay.
they have experience behind them. And if they are minded, if they are men of true faith, and if they are men and women who bear true allegiance to the Constitution, they will do what is good for the country. And some of them are doing, I think.
You know what? I am heartened to hear this, because my argument before this last weekend was, regardless of who we put in, it will be the same group of people operating along the same lines. But if you're telling me that behind the scenes, okay, I know that the DG of health is Nur Hisham. Like, who is the DG of MITI or business? I can't say that I know offhand, but yeah, I, along with most of the rakyat, are looking for people who will make decisions in the best interest of the rakyat. And I think that has not been felt by the rakyat recently. So
I think this is largely because the cabinet has been at odds with each other. I think you can't deny that, number one. Number two, I think the senior civil servants are frustrated because these members of the cabinet just give contradictory orders. One guy says can be done this, another guy says close down all the factories. I mean, you've got 5.3 million guys out there on wages, working for wages. We've got about 4.3 million foreign workers in this country. You're what, 8 million people out of 32 million people doing nothing, hanging about. You think it's going to be advantageous to have 8 million people hanging about doing nothing, 10 million people hanging about doing nothing? The civil servants are, I think, doing the best that they can to make the machinery go smoother. And I think they have been, on most occasions, stopped by ministers, because you've got this minister coming and standing in front there and giving a speech. I've got one DG whose face is forever out there giving me this figure after figure after figure. I'm not interested in the figure. I want you to tell me, what are you doing to make sure less people die, more people live, and how you're going to make your life better? I am not interested in your statistics. Your statistics does not give me money to eat. I want to know when I can open my factory. I've got a factory of 22,000 guys. I want to open my factory. Today you say, A, can open. MITI comes one letter. The next day, the district officer is in front of my office with the policeman and says, close it now or else. So then, all sorts of funny stuff happens in between, Fortunately, some of the clients for whom I work are all gentlemen. They told me nothing doing, no paying any money on the table. Close means close. We don't care. The government can do what it wants. We will fight through to the end of it. We will go and do it the right way. But not everybody is like that. And people out of a state of desperation will do stuff. And we cannot allow that. You must allow the civil service enough freedom to implement your policies. But if you, of course, didn't have policies, and I think the PN government didn't have any policy that I can remember, from the time I was old enough to understand what was going on in government, the PN government is possibly the worst government we've had in the history of Malaysia. And I think for the next 100 years, we will not have anybody as bad as the PN government. But the thing is, if the civil service gets frustrated, nothing gets done. You must leave the civil service enough freedom to get out there and implement the policies. If they do wrong, they will be hauled up before parliamentary committees anyway. So you don't have to worry about civil servants running off with the loot.
okay,
Except for the guys who did it. Yeah.
I'm just going to quickly refer to Kevin Daniel Victor's question. We can comment on the possibility of having younger ministers. Is Cooley still relevant? This question is, I would like to further this question, but the point is, as we're talking about the civil service handling things. Now, potentially, okay, number one, do we know when the next election is? We don't really, right?
2023, I believe it will be on the last day is the 9th of May 2023. That is the last day at which point you have to dissolve parliament, if I'm not in grave error. Because the last day we had the election was the 8th of May. It was announced on the 9th of May 2018. You add 5 to that, you come to, I think, the 9th of May 2023.
So what you're saying is, okay, now you completely derailed me. What you're saying is, if no one steps forward with concrete evidence that they have a huge majority of the members of parliament, we could have a caretaker president, prime minister until 2023.
Well, that's a possibility, but there is another possibility. After the Second World War in England, Attlee withdrew support from Churchill, and the Churchill government fell.
Yes,
and,
I remember that.
His Majesty, the King, called Churchill and said, all right, I tell you what, you become the caretaker prime minister and you form a caretaker cabinet, but you promise me, once things are moving along nicely, you must have the election. But that was after the Second World War. So he promised, and he had the election, and he lost. But the point is, and he became prime minister back in 1951 again, and he lasted for another 6 years. But the point is, the caretaker prime minister cannot go on for another 2 years. That's impossible. It's a practical impossibility. Within the next week, 5 days, 10 days, they have no choice but to form the government. The question you should ask me is, suppose for 3 weeks no government has been formed, can His Majesty exercise any discretion and call forward Mr. X of the Dewan Rakyat? Can you come here, please? I am now trusting you with forming a government. Can you do this? It's a very difficult question. There is no answer, and I hope it doesn't come to that, because our constitution doesn't answer that question.
Hold on, let me backtrack you 5 seconds. Are you saying that within 3 days or 5 days or a week, or things may change again, or should change again?
It should. It should. You can't give these fellas more than 2 weeks or 1 week or more than 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days. Because so if somebody is attacking us, if the COVID problem turns for the worse, if there is a real hassle in the country, there's an emergency, we need a leader to take charge. We can't be having these fellas fighting who's going to become the prime minister. And we can't have an election. We are in a terrible situation, and these people who are MPs should become more responsible and say, it doesn't matter who's the prime minister, let's save the country and deal with it. 2 years hence, we will fight in the elections and we'll deal with it. That's the attitude they should take. And if they don't take it within the next 3 days, I have no regard for this group of MPs. Absolutely none.
So basically what you're saying, GK, is that you're hoping that because of the incredibly unique situation that we are in, especially being in the middle of a pandemic, you are hoping that something is knocked into the heads of all these women, ladies and gentlemen in the current position, and they eventually turn around and go, you know what, screw whatever we want personally during this moment, we'll wait for the next election, but for now, let's all get behind this person.
Yeah, that's the correct thing to do. So the question the gentleman asked me about Tengku Razali, I cannot answer. I'm not a politician. I don't understand how things work. I have a particular analysis who should be the prime minister, but that analysis is unfair because I may not have enough facts to make a decision. So can you please forgive me? I'm not going to make any comments about who is the right candidate, because I'm a bit cross with all these chaps in the first place, and I don't want to go down that road. Yeah.
I think we're all a bit cross with these chaps.
Yeah.
And we have been, at different degrees of crossness over the last 18 months. Yeah. You know what? I'm always trying to look for an angle where, no matter what's happening in the politics, I'm more concerned about what's happening on the ground with the rakyat. So I must say I'm heartened to hear that the civil service, in your words, will continue. They've been there for 45 years or whatever, and maybe they can do better, because I'm reminded of when the pandemic first hit in March 18 or March 20th, 2020. For a month, it seemed like the civil service were handling everything, and for a month or so, there seemed to be no politics to anything, and we seem
They
to
were
be.
doing a brilliant job of it.
They were doing a good job of it.
Yeah, until the politicians put their foot in it and took it and put it in their mouth and messed it all up and started drinking warm water, and that was the end of it. One fellow is talking about karimi, another fellow is talking about warm water, one more fellow is talking about, all these figures. And I just look at these guys in TV and I'm asking myself, do these guys really care for the people? One fellow is saying, minta maaf, apa yang saya buat, maaf, zahir dan batin and all the rest of it. Well, where was your maaf for 27 months? I want to know. How many people have died? 20,000, almost 20,000 people have died. Have you thought about those families? Some of them are breadwinners. Some of them have got nothing to eat. People are putting up white flags. It's a disgrace for a country like Malaysia, which is rich in every conceivable kind of material in the world. We've got rain all time, 3 times a year. We've got wonderful vegetation. We've got, no, we don't know how to manage. We borrowed billions of dollars, 3 weeks ago? Why are we doing all this? These guys are so busy fighting about who should be the prime minister, who should be the deputy prime minister. This fella running off to see Tun Mahathir, will you support me as a candidate for prime minister? And Mahathir brushing him off. I'm thinking in my head, what's wrong with these two fellas? Mahathir actually said the right thing. He said, guys, think about how you're going to get there. Of course, Mahathir will always say the right thing at the right time in the right way, but doesn't necessarily mean it. But the point is, think about the people. Think about what the country needs. And if a decent leader comes up and says, okay, I will lead and I will keep everybody together, then give him a chance, whoever he is. And I'm sure the advisors of His Majesty the King, as well as all the party leaders who mean well, they will have, of course, the right thinking members of those guys in different parties should forget about their skin color, should forget about the shirt that they wear, the color of the jersey they wear. You're playing football on a pitch and a member of your opposing team falls down with a broken foot. What do? You kick the ball outside there, you attend to him, don't you? We've been watching this in Olympics where people behave like perfect gentlemen. Why can't our politicians be perfect sportsmen and perfect gentlemen?
I think you have encapsulated it absolutely correctly. How come, and this is a question that a lot of Rakyat are asking, how come the powers that be are not seemingly acting for the Rakyat? In sporting terms, why are they not picking up or throwing the ball out of the pitch when they see the opponent has fallen over or broken the leg? Corruption, maybe? I don't know whether you can hear the dogs barking at the back there. I think they heard me talking about corruption.
Are they the dogs of corruption or your dogs?
The dogs of corruption. Yes, the neighborhood dogs of corruption. But anyway, yeah, so you've mentioned it. You've pointed out something which is absolutely true. Sportsmanship. Sportsmanship is an amazing attribute. It is an amazing thing to view. It's an amazing thing to experience. And I don't think we've experienced it enough in politics, the act of sportsmanship. And I myself am enthralled when I see people of opposing parties going, yeah, you know what that guy said, I agree with. I will go with that. I may not agree with him on other issues, but I will agree him on this issue. And I've not seen that. I think, I've seen it a couple of times in this whole last 18 months of the pandemic, where someone from another party goes, you know what, that decision made, actually, no, I have seen it. A lot of people have agreed with the vaccination program to a certain degree, and even from the opposition side. So that's what's lacking: sportsmanship. I'm gonna hang on to that word. Will anything? Okay, so you say something is going to change within 3 to 5 days or 7 days. What do you? What are the A, B, C, D, E options that might happen in 3 or 5 or 7 days?
Okay, when the Prime Minister has lost his majority, he goes to His Majesty the King and he says, Your Majesty, I have lost my majority. I have two choices under the Constitution. Either I now convince you to dissolve Parliament, and I think they actually and seriously considered it. Crazy guys that they were. They actually considered it. Either we call for elections, and His Majesty in this morning's letter, brilliant advices, he says, There are places where we are going to hold elections, the number of hospital beds are not enough. The infection is at a dangerously horrible level. I'm not going to allow. So he gives, not only he exercises his discretion to say no elections, he explains why. No other king has done that. And this gentleman explains it. So brilliant. So he says, okay, I'm not going to dissolve parliament, I'm sorry. So he says, okay, in that case, I have to resign. So then you have party A with 88 seats or 89 seats. And then you have party B with so many seats. And they all have to get together. And they have to come together and say, all right, we'll have to work together. That's the only minority government option that they have. So what do we have? We've got DAP with 42 seats, PKR with 35 seats, Amanah with 11, UMNO with 15, Warisan with 8, Pejuang with 4, PSB with 2, UPCO with 1, and Muda with 1, and 1 independent. So why can't these 120 guys get together and say, all right, this is what we're going to do? On the other side of the fence, we've got Bersatu with 31. There's nothing Bersatu about the Bersatu party anyway. Then PAS has got 18. Star has got 1. Well, I hope it's not us. Then there's UMNO with 23, MCA with 2, MIC with 1, PBRS with 1, SUPP with 1, PDP with 1, PRS with 2, PBB with 1, PBS, GPS, all these are with 1, independence 4. So the thing is this. This is a perfect storm. A perfect storm. We've got people of disparate opinions all over the place. Put your opinions in the dustbin. Your only opinion should be, how do I help the people become a better nation? How do I help the welfare of the poor and the needy? Can I get the position as Minister of Defense? How about Minister? I tell you, you'll be shocked. I tell you, these politicians, these 120 over fellows who are arguing on both sides, have no idea the rage that is boiling in the hearts of ordinary citizens. And in the next election, I predict there's going to be a horrible punishment for a great many people. Fellas are going to lose in a way they've never understood. I tell you, the people are absolutely livid. And if these politicians don't make up their mind within the next 3 days, they are going to pay the price. I'm telling you, these guys have no idea. All sitting in their aircon homes, eating curry mee and all the rest of it. They have no idea how angry the Mat Sabu is on the ground. The Abus and the Amats and the Alongs and the Akaus and the Alongs are doing it. The Akaus and the Munyams and the Mutusamis and all these fellas. They're going to be cross. And they will show their anger in the election. And some fellas will say, so what? COVID or no COVID? I'm going to go and vote. You know why? I have to teach these fellas a lesson. And that is the day this PN government is going to find out how many wrongs. Can you imagine? From the time the PN government took over, they have done everything possible not to open parliament. Can you imagine that? They have done everything possible to use the emergency as a weapon, to weaponize emergency as a concept. You have PCDA, the Prevention and Control of the Diseases Act. You could have used that. Oh no. You could have used the National Security Act. Oh, you didn't use that. You go straight to the emergency and you go and stand in front of the king and say, I'm advising. One lady called Zuraida Kamaruddin and says, kalau kita cakap dekat tuanku, dia kena ikut lah. What kind of talk is this? You have to say the right things in the right way to the king. The king is obliged to act. If you say unconstitutional things to the king, he is not obliged to obey you. So the anger of the people, they must understand. You look at this guy, white-haired guy, railing and railing and railing. I'm railing because I meet people who are from all walks of life, and they tell me, wait for election. I'll teach these fellas a lesson. I'll teach, for so many years, no matter what happened, I supported this party, and I believe in religion, I supported this party. Now, I tak mau ikut depa. Aku pergi ikut suka hati aku. Aku I'll go and vote for independent. Today, all sorts of new groups of people are coming up. A group called Rata is coming up. Another group called Gerak Independent is coming up. Those are the guys who are going to move the country forward, not these established parties. Their days are over. There is a transition in the country. There is a transition in the thinking of the people. The young people who are educated, even those people who can't speak English, who speak Malay, they understand. They are very mature. They are writing. They are asking questions. Right questions at the right time in the right order. And I think if the election comes, there is going to be a great change. This is what I think. Aris.
I'm heartened by that, but at the same time, I'm disheartened by when you say, yes, election will come and those things very possibly might happen, but my immediate concern is what's going to happen to the people between now and the election, because with my NGO, the whole branch, and in your own life, you've had personal experience of the effects of the COVID as well. We see how there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of hunger, there's a lot of desperation, there's a lot of depression out there, and not everyone is going to survive that period between now and the election. And I'm just wondering, how do we lessen the number of people who fall through the cracks or die before the interim?
In the interim, this group of 120 people have to ask themselves the correct question, which is, how do I help the people? There's a guy called Ronnie Tam who's saying PM must be chosen by the Rakyat. This was an idea you proposed some while ago, and you said the PM must be directly chosen by the people. And I agree. I think we stopped messing around with leaving the choice of ministers and PM in the hands of all these politicians who are forever jumping all over the place. I think we have to vote in a government that basically is going to change our electoral system, and we need to have a guy who will be personally responsible to the guy on the street. Just coming up there and sending me a Twitter message, saya pohon maaf, apa-apa kesilapan dan kesalahan yang saya telah melakukan, that's not good enough for 20,000 people who are dead. That's not good enough. Your apology is worthless. So in the interim, we've got to have these 120 people who are inflicted upon us by destiny. They have to come and deal with it. After that 2 years, then we will decide what we want.
I do hope that what you have been talking about comes to fruition, meaning these 120 plus people somehow get it into their head that, you know what, regardless of our own personal desires or requests or thoughts of what we are going to achieve or get, we need to, for this moment at least, until we start fighting again over the next election, get together and just find the freaking best way to bring Malaysia out of the doldrums that we are currently in. And I feel that personally. It's just, I guess my emotions are boiling over here again. That, you're right. When you talk about it that way, what is it? What's the number? 20,000 now? 20,000 deaths? Something like that. I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is probably the second worst time in our Malaysia's history. I think 40,000 were killed during the war, but that was a world war in Malaysia. We're halfway there. And we are not a poor country. We are not an inept country. We're not without resources. We have resources. We have fantastically amazing thinking people and wonderfully brilliant minds. We are not, to use a frame, sorry, I'm going to say it, and we're not Ethiopia, but we could very well be.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I do. Yeah, I do. You see, the thing is, instead of yelling at our politicians, we should advise them. You see, there's nothing wrong in a guy in PAS supporting a guy in DAP. There's nothing wrong in a guy in DAP supporting a guy in PAS. There are good people in PAS. I tell you, though, for about 20 years, I used to vote PAS because I loved the Guru, the previous Guru. I loved him very much. Yeah, I did. For 20 years, I would go out of the way and say to my wife, we'll vote these PAS fellas in. You know why? I trust them. These fellas are really religious. They won't, tell lies to us. But when that gentleman passed away, something happened. There was a sea change. All right. Then I used to look at certain leaders in UMNO, and I used to admire them. There's a guy in Negeri Sembilan called Tok Mat. I admire that guy. I have disagreements with him, but I admire when he talks. He constantly thinks about the people. When he talks about the constitution, he has a clear. You ask some fellas, some of our MPs, how many rules are there in the Parliament Standing Orders? That How many rules are there for you to file a motion in order to ask a question? Gua mana tahu orang bikin sama saya lah, kita pun ikut lah. You know, you have this, you and Alan Pereira always play this MP. Even those comedian MPs have more brains than some of these fellas, you know. They have no understanding. Actually, I'm going to insist, anybody who wants to become an MP must go to a particular school and get a certificate. You must really understand the constitution before you're allowed to contest. You know, we have to teach the constitution to our school children. Our school children have to understand these rules of the constitution. There's a great many things that we have to teach our children. Teach the constitution in Bahasa Malaysia to the children. Okay. So if there's a question, Haris, if His Majesty appoints a new Prime Minister and then forms his own cabinet, will it be considered a backdoor government? Will it be considered lawful or legitimate government? My answer is, if there was a legitimate support of 112 people or MPs or more, then that government is a legitimate government. You use the word backdoor because there was a electoral mandate given to Pakatan Harapan. Pakatan Harapan came into power. A group of people conspired and betrayed the trust that Pakatan Harapan had reposed on the people, and the people had reposed on Harapan, and then the whole thing turned upside down. But that's not the answer. Every MP in Parliament is an MP legitimately voted in. If 112 or more of those MPs get together and form the government according to the principles of the Constitution, it is a legitimate government. It is legal. It's not backdoor. But the question whether PN is a backdoor government will be answered by history. And for 50 years from today, we'll be talking about the backdoor government of PN, because that's the label it earned for itself. It was not a label that others gave it. It earned it for itself. So the new government has to earn a legitimacy label, and that is up to that government. That's the answer.
Okay, Anton, I am all exhausted, and it's been quite a Monday. Are there any other questions coming up here? Because GK, I mean, I feel I can speak to you all night about this, but at the end of the day, sometimes I also feel like, yeah, that's why I call the show "What's Going On Malaysia," because I may sound cliche, but I want Malaysians, I want Malaysia to feel safe again, if you know what I mean. Just safe, knowing that we are led, we are guided, we are in the hands of those more knowledgeable and perhaps more, what's the word, prihatin, more thoughtful than us, such that they can handle bringing us to a better place. That, you know, in my case, my children grow up going, oh, what an amazing country. So I must admit, for many years, I maybe have not been feeling that way, but I'm hopeful that we can reach that stage one day where, do you think anything will change with the current batch of characters we have?
I have great faith, yes. I'm angry, yes. I'm disappointed, yes. But these are the people we choose, and sometimes we inflict upon ourselves illnesses, and we have to deal with it. But the thing is, I have great faith. I saw a lady in DAP getting up and speaking. Her name was Hana Yo, I think it was. And I heard her speaking, and I realized we've got brilliant people in the government. There was another Malay lady, ethnic Malay lady, who spoke, and she spoke in Malay, and I was listening to her. She was speaking about the environment. I was listening to her, and I said, this person is making so much sense. And I had a fellow from Pakatan, whatever it was, Parikatan, whatever, he said something. I was listening to him and said, wow, this guy is making sense. So I can make the distinction that an intelligent person, when he gets into a party, becomes stupid. I've seen it. And this guy who gets up in Parliament and says, look, let's quit arguing about all this. Can we please say some useful things that will help the people? Can we now come together and agree on a common policy that will help? That's a conversation we need to change. I have hope, Haris. The fact that these fellas quit and they were defeated by their own raised by their own petard, as it were, they were defeated by their own games, tells me that there is still hope in this country. And I think Malaysia is God's own country. And I have absolute faith in this country. I think we have a sound group of people. I think we have really responsible civil servants. Some of them make me cross, but most of them are pretty jolly good. We've got a good police force. Some of them are not so good, but most of them are pretty good. The armed forces, hasn't straight away come into the streets with their tanks and taken power. Very responsible, sitting back, being very respectful of democratic institutions. We don't have people shooting each other. We are not like India or some other place in Pakistan, Afghanistan, where fellas blowing each other up in cars. Has it realized or not? You can go out to the town at the night and come back with your wife without getting shot to death by an opposing racial group. We are in a wonderful country. We must be grateful for that. So there's much to be grateful for, and there's much to be upset about. But unless we have hope, we will never go forward, Haris. My dear friends in this group, in this... Thank you very much.
Unless we have hope, we will never go forward.
No,
I think that is a wonderful bookend to this conversation we are having, because we started off with law, we started off with constitution, and we explored all those different areas. But at the end of the day, it's almost like we rely on things like hope and faith. And I have faith after talking to someone like yourself and seeing some of the comments in the section and everyone who's watching that, it is the people who make the difference. Yes, there are idiots out there, and on social media, they seem to be louder. But at the end of the day, there are many, many good people. And going back to what you just said, I want to agree with you 100%. There are good people in every political divide. And if only a person from past could, get up once in a while and say, saya setuju dengan saudara saya daripada DAP itu. Apa yang dia cadang tu bagus. And if only a DAP person could get up once in a while and say, you know what, and I'm sure they do, but more often, saya setuju dengan saudara saya daripada UMNO. Apa yang dia cadangkan tu memang bermanfaat kepada rakyat. Things like this. Then I think, because right now the people follow what the leaders do, and if the leaders start doing that more and more often, we may personally start thinking, actually, okay lah, orang PAS tu, okay lah, those DAP people, not so bad lah, those UMNO, because we see examples of people working together, and that's what it's going to take to change this country.
I've got a shortcut for you. A shortcut for you.
A shortcut, okay, lawyer shortcut, I'm all ears.
Put ladies in charge, lady ministers, lady generals, lady IGPs, they will do a better job than these egotistical men, Ladies, you put them in charge, they will sort you out. I speak from personal experience. My mother was a great leader. My wife is a great leader. My daughter is a great leader. My granddaughter today told me that she's gonna, one day aspire to go into Olympics. And I asked her, and my wife asked her, "What's Olympics?" It's a race, So the thing is, she's 4 years old. The thing is, there is hope. Put the ladies in charge, and everything will be sorted. Good night.
On that note, I don't think you're going to top yourself. Thank you so much, Tuan GK Ganesan. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. And thank you so much for keeping us entertained with your very logical and very factual observations on what's going on in Malaysia. I hope to have you back very, very soon as a guest. Maybe not in 3 or 5 days if things begin to change, but very, very soon. Terima kasih again, Mr. GK Ganesan. Thank you so much. Would you like to end off with one particular word, or you're okay with that?
Okay. Good night and wanakam.
Good night and wanakam to you, sir. Thanks so much. Tuan-tuan and puan-puan, there we go. If there is hope, or there must be hope, then that is the only way for this country to move forward. Ladies and gentlemen, watching out there, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for watching this live stream. It was really, truly a last minute organization, and I didn't have enough time to put this together, but I think this has been one of my most enjoyable episodes so far. I say that all the time, but truly this has been really a moment to savor. I call the show What's Going On Malaysia because it is a question I ask myself, almost every day. And I am on a quest to find the answer. And that is why I invite the guests that I have on the show. Regardless of how I personally feel about them, I always want to know other people's opinions, especially if they have an opinion different to mine, which is why I appreciate everyone who's come on the show. And I appreciate you for watching the show. And thank you so much for commenting. Your comments have been amazing. Your comments have been truly an inspiration to me. And I hope, as much as you have, I hope that I myself find the answer to the question, what's going on in Malaysia? Has that question been answered tonight? I think we are a couple of steps closer. I've certainly learned a lot about the history of Malaysia, the constitution, and the fact that we had two caretaker prime ministers that were not Bumiputra, because it is not in the constitution that a prime minister has to be Bumiputra. Boom! That fact alone was enough for the price of the ticket of this show, which is basically free. Thank you for watching, everyone. Thank you for sharing. And if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe on and click on the bell right here, and get notified about the next YouTube clips that I have coming up. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for spending your time with us. And if you're watching this after the show as well, please take the time to leave a review. I actually have a review winner, which I forgot to announce last night. This is a review winner from B. Huai Chua, who said, "Great work, Mr. Harith. You really did a great job. Love all your interviews and what's going on in Malaysia. You've tabled out all the answers to your questions in a very layman term that we as a riot can understand. Keep it up." Thank you, B. Huai Chua. Leave your review. And remember to hashtag what's going on Malaysia, so I can easily find it. And we're going to be sending B. Huai Chua 100 ringgit worth of vouchers from Dome Cafe. To the rest of you, thank you, D. Secret Gal. Thank you, Freaky Meltdown. Thank you to Andy Lim. Thank you to Lady Catherine. Thank you to Wicket. Thank you to Rena O. Thank you, everybody who is watching me the show. And I will be with you back soon, probably sooner than later, with another episode of What's Going On Malaysia. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum. Good night.